I began my cybersecurity career 16 years ago, leading information security teams at eBay and Zynga. These were super cool places to be working in information security and risk management. In both cases, we were running online operations 24/7 with millions of simultaneous users daily. eBay had an uptime requirement of 99.94% and is one of the first major electronic commerce shops enabled strangers to transact with each other over the internet. Zynga was growing incredibly rapidly as an early adopter of Amazon AWS. In 2009, the Zynga game Farmville launched, and in just a few weeks, the game went from 0 to 10 million daily active users. A few months later, it rose to 80 million daily active users. Now I'm at Cobalt and we build security software and we provide pen testing as a service. Like many DevOps companies, we are data driven in every aspect of our business, from product to engineering to marketing to finance. Our business is run by the numbers. In today's session, I'm going to tell you about my journey exploring and creating security metrics, from the eBay Global Information Security team to authoring a book on the topic with McGraw-Hill to conducting dozens and dozens of BSIM assessments to our latest research project at Cobalt, the State of Pen Testing 2021, which features data and insights from over 1,600 pen tests during the year 2020. I will tell you why I think the information security is due for a new model when it comes to thinking about information technology, people, and process. And I'll share a few insights about challenges that I've observed and encountered when using security metrics throughout dozens and dozens of different scenarios during my career. I'll tell you about the best model that I've come across for communicating risk effectively to company executives and getting them on board with managing it appropriately. One small note that I am just thinking of is that when I'm presenting, I can't also be looking at the chat. And I think that's okay. And I will just present, and every once in a while I'll just check in. And in any case, afterwards, I will be in the after speaker ask me questions place. So if you have questions, we will get to them. But I will not be able to present and also look at the chat at the same time. So just to let you know, here is my metrics journey that I want to tell you about. So I joined eBay as an information security engineer in 2005. And in 2006, Dave Cullinane joined the company as the CISO. Dave had been the CISO for Washington Mutual prior to joining eBay. And so here we are, running information security for this company that enables strangers to transact with each other over the internet. And Dave goes to eBay's chief financial officer and the executive team and says, this security program is wildly underfunded. We need so much more money. And he asked for a bunch of money and he asked for a bunch of people, and they gave it to us. And I found myself managing, as the chief of staff to the Global Information Security team, an 8-figure security budget. We also grew the team from about 20 to about 60 people. And 6 months later, Dave turns to me and he says, okay, Caroline, we are hiring the people. We have bought the technology and we have many projects in flight. Now what we need is the metrics to show the value and to ensure ongoing investment. And so that was my first exposure to this idea of security metrics. Now, in 2010, I learned about someone else's book. Lance Hayden wrote a book that came out in 2010 called IT Security Metrics. And I contributed a chapter to that book and I did a technical review. And in 2011, I published a different book because I thought to myself, Lance's book, IT Security Metrics, at the time in 2010, I actually thought it was like a decade ahead of its time. And I thought to myself, perhaps what the industry needs is a beginner's guide. And so here is that book. Now, while this was going on, I was on the eBay security team. The BSIM was happening simultaneously. So the BSIM initiative began in 2006. when folks at Cigital, who are now part of Synopsys, began to develop a model to describe software security initiatives. The first version of the BSIM was published in 2009. And there are many different frameworks and models that we use as information security practitioners, as application security practitioners. What makes the BSIM a little bit different is the BSIM is not a prescriptive model. BSIM does not say you should do A and B and C. BSIM says we've gone out and looked around, and this is what we see people doing. Because there's a big difference between what you should do and what you actually do. And BSIM says this is what people are actually doing in the world. I will admit this particular graphic is a little bit out of date. Since I put these slides together, there has been a new BSIM. So check it out, bsimm.com. I highlight that here because one of the things that I loved about doing the BSIM, in addition to hanging out with Sammy Miguez, is that it's very data oriented, right? So I had an opportunity to look at a lot of different software security programs and really just kind of consume and analyze and dwell upon all of the data. So here's something I want to discuss, which is that security metrics are hard. This particular quote is from a good friend of mine. She is no longer with this particular financial firm. She's actually at a very cool e-commerce company. At the time when she shared this quote with me, she had spent 7 years trying to do application security metrics with various successes and failures. There was a point at which she could not even get a meeting with folks that she was trying to talk to about her program, because when she had tried to talk to them in the past, they did not understand what she was talking about. They didn't value yet what she had to say. And so throughout my career, doing security metrics, talking to folks about security metrics, asking folks about security metrics, I have seen two typical outcomes. Outcome number one, there's a traffic light, right? Red, yellow, green. And this is an oversimplification. The other thing I see is way too much information overload. So there is a problem with too much information, because in our lives, we get bombarded with information. And what we have to do is we have to separate the signal from the noise. And this is something that happens when we try to talk to other people about security metrics. We can sometimes provide too much information, and that can actually dilute the meaning of what we're trying to convey. And so today, I want to share with you an idea that I have for a model for effective security metrics. So I want to say that fundamentally, security is about protecting value. And this is something that we do in our lives. We make risk management decisions all day, every day. Should I get my vaccination booster shot? Should I wear a helmet when I'm riding my bicycle? Do I need to buckle my seatbelt? All the time. We are, do I need to clean up that puddle in my bathroom so that I don't slip on it? All the time, every day, we are making risk management decisions in our lives. And information security, cybersecurity is not so different. It's about protecting value. The thing about the modern world today is that so many things that we value are shifting from the physical realm and to the digital realm. And so this is why cybersecurity is so important. Now, in the realm of cybersecurity, we have cybersecurity doers, people who do cybersecurity, and we have cybersecurity talk-abouters, people who talk about cybersecurity. Security metrics is about talking about cybersecurity. There is a reason why talking about cybersecurity is super important. It's because security is an emergent property. It happens between people. It happens because of interactions between systems. It's something that is constantly changing. And so cybersecurity can seem complex, and it is complicated, but I don't think it's impossibly complex. I actually think that despite the fact that in the field, not a single thing. It's about understanding the fundamentals that we can rely on and not allowing ourselves to get caught up in this myth that the problems are too difficult to solve. Throughout my career, I have been on 2 security teams as a practitioner. I have led a global product management team. I've done consulting, and I'm currently at my first SaaS startup. And this series of diverse experiences has helped me to see that cybersecurity is complicated, but it is not impossibly complex. Despite the fact that NIST 853 is nearly 500 pages long, PCI DSS is more than 130 pages long, the BSIM, which I just spoke about, has more than 100 activities, and the ASVS has more than 60 pages. Despite all that, I do think that the fundamental principles of cybersecurity and application security, software security, whatever security, right? For that matter, it can be boiled down to 4 basic building blocks. A few years ago, my colleagues at Cobalt and I developed a white paper. This is available at no cost to download. It's called A Practitioner's Guide to Application Security. And it's only 20 pages long. It's a 20-page document that outlines how simple, not necessarily easy, but simple application security can be. It includes a 1-page poster that we call the Modern AppSec Framework. And this framework has only 4 components. Number 1, govern. Number 2, find. Number 3, fix. And number 4, prevent. So if in cybersecurity, we have cybersecurity doers and we have cybersecurity talk-abouters, who is it that is doing the talking? Sometimes it is the leader of a cybersecurity team and other company executives. And I am just realizing that my notes are getting a little formatted funny. Let me just adjust this. Okay. The relationship between a cybersecurity leader and an organizational executive can be complicated. Why is that? Maybe it shouldn't be complicated because every successful business uses metrics to drive action plans and achieve goals. So why can't we as security practitioners simply use metrics to drive action plans and achieve goals? Here's the thing that makes it complicated. Most businesses have things in common. And this makes it easy to define metrics that can be applied across many different organizations. So for example, oh, and there go my notes again. Thank you for your patience. All right, we're going to try something else. I'm going to find my notes in a different place. Thank you for your patience with me. All right. I think this is still going to work. You're gonna see my screen in this format for a little while, and I think that's okay. So every successful business uses metrics to drive action plans and to achieve goals. Most businesses have a few things in common, which also means it's easy to define metrics that can be applied in a standard fashion across many different organizations. For example, many businesses are trying to sell a product or a service, typically for a transaction cost. Often these types of businesses invest money and resources to convert prospects into newly acquired customers. Standard metrics for a SaaS business, for example, might include things like customer churn, SQLs, and CAC to LTV ratio. Every SaaS business and every SaaS CEO has prospects that are valuable to the marketing and to the sales team. Every SaaS business has customers that stop buying the product at some point. And every SaaS business invests money into acquiring customers and can estimate the lifetime value of those customers. So it's easy, if you're a SaaS business, to have standard metrics. But then why aren't there similarly defined metrics for cybersecurity? Why don't we have the equivalent of customer churn, SQLs, and CAC to LTV ratio for cybersecurity? It's because whereas a business measures in concrete units like dollars and number of customers, cybersecurity is about managing risk, and that is much more difficult to define. So let's think about how we measure the risk management decisions that we make in everyday life, and about the other people around you and how they make risk management decisions. I am willing to bet that you make different risk management decisions than some of your friends, your family members, and other people in your community. And so that's why metrics are easy in business, but not when applied to security. Most businesses want more customers, lower customer acquisition cost, and higher customer lifetime value. But security controls, cybersecurity controls, those come at a cost. And that trade-off is where the complexity lies. If you ride a bicycle and you don't wear a helmet, you might have made that choice because you'd rather spend the money on a new pair of cycling shoes. Or you might have made that choice because you don't like how it feels or how it looks to wear a helmet. These are examples of convenience, ease, or social acceptance costs. Maybe you think you're really good at riding a bike and you're only riding around your own backyard. Or maybe you're a beginner and you're cycling on a busy road. In cybersecurity, there are a number of different factors at play. An organization might not patch or update software across all of its systems because they don't have an inventory of all the system owners, or because those systems might respond in an unpredictable way, or because they can't seem to carve out time when it's okay for those systems to be down such that an upgrade can be performed. One organization might decide to patch right away, whereas another might choose to wait a month, and yet another might choose to wait a year. Okay, I think I can go back to my notes and present again. Let's try this. So Caroline, what do we do? What do we do about these things? We understand, Caroline, that cybersecurity metrics are harder than SaaS business metrics, which are standard. And so here's how I think you can address these things. Number one, you can start with risk management objectives. And we're going to talk about these in detail in just a moment. What are your goals? At the highest level, it should be true that good software should help the business and bad software should hurt the business. We want to make good software and we want to fix bad software, or we want to prevent bad software from being built in the first place. So as a security leader, you can approach an executive or any stakeholder and ask questions about how to achieve that goal. Once you know what your goal is, you can answer those questions with data. What doesn't work is if you approach a company executive and you say, hey, on a scale of 1 to 10, how are you feeling about your risk tolerance today? That may not be the best setup for a productive conversation. So part of what this is about, it's about talking to people about cybersecurity in a way that says to them, I have a plan. Do you agree with my plan? If there's a problem with the plan, I'll let you know. And I'll keep you updated on where we are with the plan. I just need you to know that I have a plan and I need you to get on board and I need you to give me money for the plan. So at the very highest level, we can say good software is good for business, bad software is bad for business. Let's go one more level down. And here I run into the same problem with my notes. So thank you for your patience with me. I think this still works. So how do you have this conversation? You want to come up with a plan. Here's a picture. We're going to talk risk management objectives. Let me give you a little bit of background on risk management objectives. Several years ago, I worked with one of the greatest thinkers in cybersecurity, Sammy Migas. And together, we developed a framework for software security metrics and risk management objectives. I think this is the most successful methodology for building a security metrics program. So here, I'm going to tell you what are these risk management objectives. I'm also going to suggest a few questions that you can use to determine if each of these objectives is relevant to your business operations and security posture. There are 7. This is, if you will, the money slide. If you were gonna take a screenshot, if you were gonna take notes, this is from my perspective, the slide to take a screenshot or notes from. So number 1, I think we should use cybersecurity as a competitive differentiator. How much do your customers care about security? Because if it's a lot, then you should definitely be using it as something to help you stand out from the competition. Do your customers expect security to be a core part of your business? Facebook, Meta. If it's a clear expectation, then it's also a clear competitive advantage. Would your customers buy your product instead of another one because of better security? Because if they would, then a strong security posture is something to talk up early and often. Risk management objective number 2. Comply with a regulatory requirement, contractual obligation, or industry standard. So you've got to know what requirements, contracts, and standards apply to your business. If they include security standards, then it's an opportunity for you to use it as a way to get folks on board with your security plan. Number 3, achieve a defensible level of due care. What does due care mean in the context of your business? Does it mean that you keep all of your software up to date and apply patches regularly? Or that you use two-factor authentication wherever possible? You've got to find out what due care means in your business environment and then use it to promote strong security practices. Risk management objective number 4, prevent the same cybersecurity problems from happening over and over again. This is one of my favorites. I think that if you as a cybersecurity leader approach an executive at your organization and say, hey, I think we should prevent the same cybersecurity problems from happening over and over again, I think it's hard to disagree with that statement. I think that's a pretty good starting point for a productive conversation. So, not every organization can do this because not every security program is mature enough to do it. So, some questions you might ask yourself. Is your organization mature enough to know if the same types of issues keep showing up? Do you have reliable defect discovery processes in place? And are the findings from those being tracked and reported? If they are, here's an opportunity to use the data to make a case for remediating the problems more consistently. Alternatively, are you finding out about security incidents from customers or from independent researchers? If you're learning more about your organization's security issues from the outside than from the inside, then your program may not be mature enough to focus on this particular risk management objective, and that's okay. Risk management objective number 5. I think we should reduce the probability that malicious attackers can stop critical systems and applications from functioning. I think so too. That's hard to disagree with. Similar questions. Do you know and understand which systems and processes are critical to your organization? Because if you do, then you can make a list of critical assets and you can use it to manage security activity. Do you have defect discovery processes for identifying security flaws and bugs in those critical assets? If this information is organized such that you can associate vulnerability information with specific assets and track remediation status, PTAS platform, then this risk management objective is a good choice for you. Do you know what type of malicious attacker is likely to target your organization? Different threat actors may display different types of behavior, and you can use this information to craft your strategy accordingly. Okay, 2 more. Risk management objective number 6, require fixes for security bugs for which well-known attacks exist. Hey, company executive, I think we should require fixes for security bugs for which well-known attacks exist. Hopefully that's something that's easy to agree to. Similar to number 5, similar evaluation questions. Do you have defect discovery processes for identifying security flaws and bugs? If you can categorize those by ease of exploit, then you can make a case for addressing the ones that are easiest to attack first. Do you have effective tracking and reporting mechanisms? Because you will need to use these to make sure the bugs get fixed. And finally, number 7, achieve a comparable level of cybersecurity to peers and or competition. How much does your company's strategy focus on competitive analysis? If there's a lot of focus here, then this might be an effective risk management objective to use at your environment. What can you find out about the level of cybersecurity investment at companies that are similar to yours in terms of size, number of customers, industry vertical, etc.? This type of benchmarking data, like what they have at the BSIM, might be able to help you convince executive stakeholders to make similar investments if they want to keep up. Okay, I'm switching notes again. And I should be able to share again. So I want to talk about why we need a new model and why the current model, how I know the current model is broken. The current model is broken. How do I know that the current model is broken? The reason I know that the current model is broken is because we just got a new OWASP top 10 in September. And side note, I made a LinkedIn Learning course about this new 2021 OWASP top 10. It is available if you want to hear about, how it's new and different. But the crazy thing is, the first OWASP top 10 came out in 2003. And if I look at the 2003 version and the 2021 version, they don't look so different from each other. The types of issues that are found in web applications today and 17 years ago is sort of the same for the most part. It is the same stuff that the best and brightest in our industry have been talking about for 17 years. Why haven't these problems been fixed? We know how to find them. We know how to fix them. And we know how to prevent them. I have a theory. And my theory is that the hardest problems to solve in software security are not actually technical problems. I think they're people and process problems. So let's talk about Equifax. 2017 Equifax breach. More than 140 million people affected. A widely accepted theory that the attackers were state-sponsored spies from China. A CEO who stepped down 3 weeks after the breach became public. $1.4 billion to clean up the mess and an FTC settlement. How did this breach happen? It was not because of a super sophisticated zero-day technical issue. It was because some software was found to be vulnerable, a patch was made available, and Equifax did not deploy the patch. This was not a crazy technical problem that lacked a solution. The technical solution was available. This was a lack of people and process innovation. And it is hard to do this work. It's not easy. It's simple, but it's not easy. Let's talk about SolarWinds. Threat actors managed to plant malware in some monitoring software, which happened to be in use by some hundreds of organizations. When the news first broke, the breach was described as a highly sophisticated, targeted, and manual supply chain attack by an outside nation state, which sounds really intense. And it is. But when you draw back the curtain, it seems as though maybe they had used the password SolarWinds123 to quote unquote protect the company's update server. In which case, it's no wonder malicious threat actors took advantage and planted some malware. This is an example, unfortunately, of a simple security misconfiguration. In this year's State of Pen Testing report, we reported that misconfiguration was the #1 most commonly identified vulnerability type found across Cobalt pen tests for the 4th year in a row. This year, we looked at data from over 1,600 pen tests performed in 2020 to learn about the assets getting tested, the vulnerabilities being discovered, and how that data changes across different industries and company sizes. We found a trend. Folks are struggling not only with security misconfiguration, but with the same top 5 vulnerabilities for 4 years in a row. Despite the fact that these are well known to the industry, teams struggle to effectively remove and prevent issues like server security misconfigurations and cross-site scripting from their environments. To try to better understand why, we surveyed 600 companies, not only Cobalt customers, 600 companies, to learn how they pursue software development, secure software development, how they pen test and remediate vulnerabilities, and where there is room for process improvements for both internal teams and security vendors. And I want to tell you about what we found. Also, this is available at no cost on the internet. You can search for State of Pen Testing 2021 and get the full report to peruse in detail. So, we're trying to figure out why these same vulnerability categories have been consistent, not only for the past 5 years, but really for the past 20 years. Why? So, boop, 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 checking my notes. All right. Who did we talk to? We talked to 600 different IT security professionals in the United States, Germany, Austria, and Switzerland. All of these folks worked for companies with 500 or more employees. These individuals were generally familiar with pen testing and had previously used pen testing at their organizations. We found out that respondents identified and fixed 54 vulnerabilities on average last year. And yet, 6 out of 10 of these individuals said that they saw the same issues reemerge at a later date. We're trying to figure out why. Why? So we have a few theories, and I want to share these theories with you. Theory number 1. Detecting vulnerabilities before code goes live is still a work in progress. First, we want to look at the big picture and figure out why is it that preventable issues slip past initial checks in an SSDLC and only come up after a third party tests for them. So nearly all respondents, 96%, agree they have to follow secure development principles in order to prevent vulnerabilities from re-emerging. And we wanted to ask them how they do that. So following secure development principles doesn't mean that each of these things needs to be at 100%. 43%, for example, do not use code reviews, and others might not be using it very diligently, and some others might not actually need it in the first place. But the fact stands that vulnerabilities get past these checks as evidenced by our data. We know that there are different types of defect discovery that take place at different stages in the software development lifecycle. Security teams are using a combination of measures to prevent vulnerabilities and find them early on, which is something that we support. It takes multiple approaches to secure an environment. Pen testing is by no means a panacea of application security, but it can be used to validate all the other parts of a SSDLC and help to inform what other areas need to be improved. Theory number 2. Teams can't find everything that gets past the earlier stages in their SSDLC because they can't pen test their entire portfolio. So 78% of study participants say yes, pen testing is a high priority item, but they only pen test 63% of their application portfolio. Why? It's hard to find good talent. It's expensive. It's hard to scope pen testing. Pen testing can be really slow to schedule. We found that only 22% said they can get pen testing scheduled within days. Most of them have to wait weeks, 55%, and some even have to wait months, 22%, to get a pen test project started. So what this means is that folks are experiencing longer periods of time between when new code is being pushed and pen testing revealing where it is vulnerable, where bugs and flaws made it past the earlier checks in the SSDLC. This can result in months of exposure that no one's aware of and therefore cannot mitigate. Theory number 3. Maybe teams are just focused on critical and high risk findings. So we found out that nearly everyone reports that their business solves critical vulnerabilities quickly, 93%. But low or medium risk vulnerabilities take a lot longer to get fixed. Over half of our survey participants said that their companies were too slow in responding to lower risk issues, and 67% of them feel that this creates significant risk to the business. Considering that low urgency vulnerabilities can be chained together and escalated into very serious problems. To minimize risk and prevent chained exploits, 79% of our study participants agreed that their organizations should focus just as much on low or medium vulnerabilities as they do high. But 25% of them said their company takes 60 days or longer to address low or medium risk vulnerabilities. And a small segment of companies, 1% of respondents, actually don't remediate them at all. Really great context and illustration for the Equifax breach. When you know you have a security problem, a technical solution exists, but for a variety of people and process related reasons, it's actually hard to get that finding mitigated. And theory number 4. Maybe remediation teams are limited to critical findings because of workflow issues. So when you've got security folks and engineering folks, in order to get pen test findings, any security vulnerabilities fixed, these folks need to work together to effectively collaborate. And largely, we don't always have efficient workflows. We don't always have automated integrations. Sometimes we have 50-page PDF reports where, security folks are taking literal PDF reports and then typing individual findings into SharePoint, into Jira. There is an opportunity for security and engineering folks to collaborate more effectively with each other. In our survey findings, we found that 18% of these folks, 18% of these folks said the relationship between their teams was neutral. 2% of them called the relationship poor. 3 in 10 respondents, however, were happy to report that company security and engineering teams were intertwined. I'm coming to the end of my presentation. I just have a couple more things, and then I'll look at the chat, and we can also go into that other room and talk about stuff. So another thing I want to tell you about is I made a LinkedIn Learning course about security metrics. The book I wrote came out 10 years ago. This online course was published this year. It is similar in nature to what I've been sharing about in this conference talk, and it's got more. So if you're interested, I encourage you to check it out. I'll also be sharing a link to this course following today's talk on my LinkedIn. And if you see that on your LinkedIn feed, you can check it out at no cost. If you want to talk about this stuff, let's chat. Let's go in the, speaker talk to me afterwards room. You can also find me on LinkedIn. You can also email me directly. I would love to talk security metrics with you. I'm going to close this out. Here I am. Okay. I think we've got like 10 more minutes. Haral says, please enter your questions here in this chat. Brian says, Dave got a $30 million security budget. So yeah, I love that this is just like something people know, right? I mean, people know, right? One of the things that Dave did that was really clever, and Haral, come back here. Come back. Let's talk about this. One of the things that Dave did that was really clever is he called up a dozen of his CISO friends and said, how much money are they giving you? And then he put it on a slide and showed it to the CFO, and they were like, "Oh my gosh, we have problems." So yes, Brian, that was miraculous. It was so cool for me to be in a position where I was able to witness that happening. William says, "Do you think poor security review of code is just one more symptom of poor analysis, coding, and quality control so popular with agile development?" Security review of code is super complicated, and I do think that, thank you, Bob. I will tell you all about the vehicles in just a moment, and I'll even turn my computer around and show you some more. So William's question, the thing about code review and it being hard is that we, generally speaking, over the past decade or so, have shifted from waterfall on-prem, where stuff was like largely relatively in our control, to a situation where developers just use whatever tech stacks they want, and they make code and they release it really fast. We've got continuous integration, continuous deployment. I mean, folks are releasing code all the time. And so doing code review in an environment like that is super hard. And even the best static analysis tools have like what? 20% signal and 80% false positives? That is a hard problem to solve. And the technology can only do as much as the technology can do. But I think that it's really the process components Who runs the scan? When do you run the scan? Who gets the results? What are the rules for what type of results get to go further and which ones get stopped? Who gets to say what's a false positive or not? Who gets to say what matters and what doesn't matter? These are challenging things. So is it a symptom of poor analysis, coding, and quality control? I actually think, and I am not a code review expert, but I think that SAST needs to get closer to the developers and further away from security. I think there's a little bit of like an ownership and accountability issue. To Bob's question, I am in my garage partially because we are renovating our home. My husband is a motorcycle fanatic. We also have 2 small children and an ATV for the kids. And we are like classic car collectors. So yeah, very very important topic. Thank you for asking. We need a fire department for cyber response for small businesses. Yeah, we totally do. We totally do. I mean, even at the largest, most well-funded, most highly prioritized security teams and security programs in the world, stuff happens. What about for small businesses who are just trying to make stuff go, who don't have all of these, who don't have all the resources that larger organizations do? That's a cool idea. I like that a lot. And that's what I've got. I welcome more questions.
Yeah, going back
Raul,
to
what
your
questions do you
slide,
have?
going back to your slide about medium and low vulnerabilities not getting fixed, how do you get, that's difficult getting people to prioritize those because there's all this other high severity vulnerabilities. So they get all the air, and the medium and low, they just hang around forever. And that I find it very difficult without artificially inflating some of those scores as a business risk, and then I can get higher priority.
Yeah. So I think that it is hard. And I think that the fact that high and critical risk vulnerabilities get fixed and medium and low vulnerabilities don't get fixed, I do think that is an outcome of folks trying to do the right thing, trying to do what they can. I think that if there's a way to technically demonstrate how low and medium risk vulnerabilities can be chained together to create a higher risk situation, then that's very interesting. Now that's not always easy to do. You need someone with the technical proficiency to be able to make that analysis. The other thing is that I think it's appropriate to say critical vulnerabilities need to get fixed fast, and it's okay for medium and low level vulnerabilities to get fixed slower, but slower doesn't mean never. I think it's better to say, hey, let's plan to fix this, 90 days from now. Let's plan to fix this 365 days from now, even if it's not ever. William has another great question. How do you relate code failure to the operating cost of a company? So the most straightforward one that I have is back when I was at eBay. I talked at the very beginning of this session about a 99.94% availability requirement rather. At eBay, everyone knew that for every second of downtime, the company was losing X number of dollars. And I think that, to the extent that code supports critical functions for a business to operate, particularly if it's related to transactions, then I actually think that can be, in some cases, a straightforward dollar calculation. And that's what I've got. I think we've got like 4 minutes left. I welcome any additional questions or comments. That puts pressure on getting more code out rather than making sure the code actually works. It is an interesting business trade-off. How do you make the decision between focusing on a feature that gets pushed and that could make money, or not pushing a new feature that could maybe make money and going and fixing something else? I think about our home renovation that we're doing. Do I want to install a new stove and oven, or do I want to fix my broken dishwasher? From my perspective, the most interesting thing about this is that these are business decisions. There is a security aspect and there is a risk management context for making these decisions, but these are business decisions. And every individual's risk tolerance is going to be different. Every company executive's risk tolerance is going to be different. I think it is our responsibility as cybersecurity leaders to acknowledge that sometimes the organization is going to take on more risk than we would like. And at the same time, to do our very best to communicate to folks the realistic exposure that exists and the real risk management acceptance, risk acceptance that's happening.